So I'm sure you're aware that Apple recently announced what they're boasting to be the future of smartphones, the iPhone X. With this phone, they're looking to give us some insight as to what the best phone should be by giving it a set of features that they find new, refreshing, and appropriate for such a device. However, I know you know where I'm going with this. A lot of this phone's features aren't necessarily new. In fact, a lot of Android phones and even some non-Android phones have had them for many years. This video wasn't made to bash Apple, but we thought we'd give some of our own insight and take a look at what Apple not so much stole, but what they borrowed. So the first and perhaps the most obvious thing is wireless charging. The first appearance that comes to mind is the Palm Pre from 2009. Now, it didn't come standard. In fact, you actually had to buy a separate backplate in order to get it to work with Palm's $70 touchstone charger. But it would later become standard on a few of the next Palm devices. Now, on iPhone X, it's using what we know as Qi wireless charging. Qi wireless charging appeared on phones from 2012 like the Nokia Lumia 820, the 920, the Droid DNA, and the Nexus 4. As the years went by, more and more phones started to support Qi wireless charging. Phones like the Nexus 5 in 2013, Lumia 950, 950 XL, even the BlackBerry Priv, as well as the Galaxy line from 2015. Then of course, Samsung one-upped everyone with fast wireless charging in 2016 for the S7, which obviously delivers a faster charge than the regular set of Qi chargers out there. So it's about time the iPhone got wireless charging, right? Granted, speeds won't be as fast as Samsung's fast wireless charging, but it's a step in the right direction. Next up is the OLED display. OLED, of course, being a display tech that differentiates itself from something like LCD, which is what Apple's been using in their devices, and they're still using it with the iPhone 8. But with OLED, every pixel has its own light, allowing for things like perfectly black blacks, since those pixels won't need to be lit. Now, I'm sure for most of you guys out there, the first thing that pops into your head when you hear OLED or AMOLED, which is more advanced than OLED, is Samsung with smartphones that look like this. But in fact, nearly 10 years ago, Nokia released the first smartphone with an AMOLED display known as the Nokia N85. Yes, not only did this tiny phone have a 2.6-inch AMOLED display, but this is what smartphones used to look like. How funny is that? Okay, that's besides the point. Around a year later, Samsung released their i7110, which also had an AMOLED display. But since we're talking strictly about OLED, there were still plenty of phones using those displays back in 2008. And if you want to get really specific, the first smartphone released with an OLED display was Samsung's first Galaxy, the i7500 from 2009. Over the years, we've seen tons of phones take advantage of OLED and AMOLED display tech. And really, Apple's not the only one playing catch up. Remember, LG is just now doing it with their V30. But it is nice to see Apple finally moving in this direction. Now, since we're on the topic of displays, let's go ahead and talk about the taller, edge-to-edge screen design. The first phone that comes to mind when talking about bezel-less displays is the Xiaomi Mi Mix from 2016. But let's not forget about the Sharp Aquos Crystal from 2014. This was a pretty bold move. It was an attempt to create a phone with the lowest screen-to-body ratio as possible. But as you can see, this resulted in the need for things like the front-facing camera to be placed on the bottom, something the Mi Mix had as well. But it pioneered a movement that bigger companies like Xiaomi, LG, Samsung, and now Apple and Google are taking advantage of. Now, while most of these companies aren't going the route Sharp and Xiaomi and others went by, making phones with the selfie cameras on the bottom so as to create the complete bezel-less look, they still have the goal of creating the smallest screen-to-body ratio as possible, giving the users more screen and less to hold. And along with that came the taller displays. The LG G6 is the notable mention here, which was the first appearance of the 18:9 aspect ratio on a modern smartphone display. This was followed by Samsung with their S8 and Note 8, there's the Essential phone, LG again with their V30, even the Google Pixel 2 XL. So while the iPhone X isn't exactly bezel-less, it's getting closer with its near edge-to-edge display. Now moving on to something that Apple is super excited about, facial recognition using Face ID. Facial recognition is nothing new. We saw this on the Samsung Galaxy Nexus from 2012. It was one of the great big features of Android 4.0 ICS, but it wasn't that great. In fact, it was pretty bad. Then fast forwarding to 2016, we got the ability to unlock the Note 7 with our faces and even our eyes, and Face Unlock works well on current devices like the S8, the Note 8, and even the LG V30 is supposed to have Face Unlock as well. For Apple, this is one of the biggest selling points of the iPhone X, even to the point where they got rid of the fingerprint reader. We'll just have to wait and see how good it really is. Now, there are a few honorable mentions when it comes to the iPhone X's big features being seen elsewhere before, things like augmented reality, a selfie portrait mode, an optically stabilized set of dual cameras, support for HDR, even the gesture-based UI with no home button. But again, the objective here wasn't to bash Apple for arriving to some of these parties late. But you gotta admit, it's kind of funny when a company that's as big as Apple boasts about a bunch of features that we've seen in phones from years ago, some of which go as far back as 9 years ago. Yes, it's not about who does it first, it's about who does it best, but the iPhone's got some incredible competition out there, so we'll just have to wait and see. So while the iPhone X may not be loaded with new technology, leave it to Apple to strive to do it better than everyone else. So that about does it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to hit that like button, comment your thoughts down below. I would love to hear your feedback, but that does it for me. I'll talk to you guys later, and thanks for watching.